Welcome to the Consulting Growth Podcast. I'm Joe O'Mahony. I have the pleasure today of being joined by James O'Sullivan, who is the CEO of Project One. James has had an interesting career, but generally focused on sort of change management, change implementation, and then ending up as a consultant with Project One in 2014. And rising up through the ranks meteorically, if you don't mind me saying, James, to becoming firstly the Director of Consulting Services, and then this year in April 2022 CEO. And I say meteoric, but we know each other. We had a dinner together and we've had a few exchanges. And one of the things you told me is that Project One doesn't take on sort of graduates fresh from uni. So I'm guessing, although you went in as a consultant, it was actually the equivalent of a senior consultant elsewhere, if not higher up.
Yes. Thank you, Joe.
Sorry, load of information. Welcome, James. Lovely to have you here.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me along. It's interesting, isn't it, listening to your own bio? Yeah, it's been a different path than most would follow, and as you said, culminating in becoming CEO at Project One earlier this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
A full plate. So listen, I've spoken to partners at big firms. I've spoken to a lot of small firms. I've got no idea so Project One, how many people are you now at Project One?
We describe it as about 100.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What keeps the CEO awake at night in terms of sort of a larger, smaller firm? I'm not sure. I guess you'd be classed as a boutique.
We are a boutique. We're classed as a medium of the SME enterprises. We do about 30 million a year of revenue, and we keep those circa 100 consultants employed on a kind of full-time basis with customers at a 90 to 95% utilization level, which is very different to the big firms. In terms of what keeps me awake, I'd imagine it's very much the same as everyone else, no matter what size firm you're working in, only with the added challenge that for any SME business, you've got to be far more hands-on. You've got to be kind of all over the business. You don't have many overhead roles, if I can call them that. So in effect, I am still out and about. I still own customer accounts. I still do sales. I still help on delivery. So it's a bit of a jack of all trades kind of role, even though you're the figurehead of the company. And in my eyes, I see that as a good thing. So even when I first went into consulting, a bit later in life than most people, kind of late 20s, early 30s, I joined Capital Consulting. I had a firm view that the leadership team should be out with the customers and not sat in their own head offices. And I've held that view all the way through my career and still do today, and I express it to anyone who's thinking of joining the company. So yeah, it's very much making sure that we're looking after our customers, that we're delivering what they want, because we can come on and talk about it, but it's a bit of a different delivery model. We don't run a full pyramid. We're really just looking at the change leadership roles, program director roles at the top of the tree, top of pyramids. It's about looking at that sales pipeline. Let's not beat about it. It's about continuing our own growth, our own journey. Next year, I think we're 25 years old. We were incorporated 1 week before Google. They've got on a bit of a faster journey than us.
But
yeah, 25 years on, designed as an SME business, designed as a boutique, designed to be independent, and we still hold true to all of those today.
Yeah, in terms of going up the ladder, a lot of your work was on the implementation, sort of end-to-end work, program management, project management, things like that. What skills have you had to develop since 2017 when you were made Director of Consulting Services, and especially looking now with the CEO hat on? What do you wish you had either perhaps done a mini course on earlier, or you found yourself very quickly learning as you've gone up to the top ranks?
Oh, that's a tricky one. This is more a personality thing, I think. Is if you want to progress through consulting, you cannot avoid the fact you've got to get into sales, business development, whatever language you want to use. Whereas most organizations focus on the delivery. And in effect, people just naturally go from delivery, and growing their delivery teams is kind of how they self-teach themselves sales. The ones who are really good at it tend to then go up to the senior partner kind of routes.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure that many organizations spend or invest enough time and effort in coaching people how to do that and how to do it right. My view has always been is actually relationship management, not sales. I still to this day have never gone in and tried to hard sell people or solutions or services. It's very much get to know the person, and in effect the rest of the work will follow. And I think it would have been good if somebody had kind of explained all of that, getting on for 20 odd years ago now, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
But as you said, it can be self-taught or self-learned. But I think there are ways that we could help people to actually do it. The challenge comes that if you say to anybody, particularly junior consultants, I want you to go and become a salesperson, the barriers come up, and it's like, oh, I'm not sales, that's dirty. I even said it myself. I know I did. It's about how do we break it down and actually get it back to relationship management, not sales.
Yeah, and it's interesting, certainly from my perspective with MBAs. I've taught on maybe 10, 15 MBAs around Europe. Some of them very good universities. There isn't a single one of them that has a business development course. They've all got marketing and digital marketing and marketing strategy, but it is funny, isn't it? And you're one of the first consultants that I've heard use the word sales instead of when I use sales in a conversation, people quickly interrupt me and say, "Oh no, business development, Joe."
Yeah. Semantics, Joe, though, isn't it? Semantics.
Yes.
Hence, I say, cut to the chase. I'm a very open and honest person. I tend to speak my mind, as you know. And I think it probably could do the whole industry a favor if we actually all did that a little bit more, because the customers are far more educated and knowledgeable than they ever were 20, 30 years ago. And that's not to be, cruel to anyone in the past. It's a very different and more fluid world.
Yeah.
Therefore, they know what they're buying by way of a service. You could, in effect, say, are we really all consulting anymore? Or are we just doing project and program management implementation of solutions more often than not technology enabled? So it's an interesting point for the industry to get its head around, really. Yeah.
And on that specific note, one thing I generally deal with firms, on my own consulting practice, smaller than yours, that want to grow into something like yours. And one of the major challenges I see is very successful founders. They've got a great network. They do all the sales. They get to 30 people or even 20 people, and they can't feed the beast they've created. And so all of a sudden they're turning around to people who have never done any business development in their life and saying, can you go and develop business with that client? Now, the size of the beast you've got there, 100 people working for you on high utilization and, high, relatively high revenue per consultant, it's not something that you by yourself can do, and probably not something just the seniors can do. So how do you develop that sort of business development culture, that relationship building early on with people who are joining the firm?
Well, I think it's multi-layered, but some of it is actually brought about by the operating model. So earlier on, I said we're slightly different to the other firms. The original owner founders, of which there were two, an IT director from Barclays and a partner from Capgemini, had a chat in a pub one night, and it was, I can't sell what you want to buy and I can't buy what you want to sell. Well, let's just go and do it ourselves. In doing that, they firmly set out to focus purely on the top of the pyramid. So the change and transformation leadership roles, if you want to call them that, the program directors, program managers, whatever different language people use. But more fundamentally, it was about bringing in consultants who had 15 to 20 years experience.
Okay.
And in doing so, you could in effect provide a service to your customers that was very much about, I can give you the people that you can't even buy from Accenture or KPMG or Deloitte, because by that point in time, they will be a director or a partner, and therefore they won't be available full time. The other benefit being obviously that in giving you people that have 15 to 20 years experience, it means they've been in many fires, many problem scenarios.
Sure.
And as much as they can't stop the scenario happening, they know how to get out quicker than people who have never been in that situation.
Yeah.
So when you come back to talking about how do you sustain and how do you grow and how do you do business development, it's actually all intertwined, because we've got a kind of a strap line, which is Project One is a consulting firm for grown-ups. Because in reality, we don't run balanced scorecards. We don't run industry or sector verticals or horizontals. We don't have sales targets for any of the consultants. It's just part of the value chain. It is very clear from the interview process, the recruitment process, all the way through to onboarding and then kind of life in the company that everybody needs to contribute. So if you imagine you're sitting in, a big bank, a big FMCG company running a very big program worth X 100 million or billion, the expectation is that you're in a multi-vendor landscape. So we will often have a big SI or a big consulting firm alongside us. We'll have an in-house team alongside us, and we're supporting a particular client generally on the C-suite. But there will be gaps, opportunities, whatever language people wish to use, where there are roles that are suited to what Project One provide. Yep. And in effect, it's the role of both that consultant, the account director who kind of looks after the account, to work together with the customer to explore which ones are right for us. But we're not looking to push in big teams. Yeah. So this is where that whole revenue protection thing becomes a different story. A customer for us, a client, an organization would probably have 2 or 3 people running their biggest, most complex, high value program as a program or as a transformation, but we're not there for BAU. So I'm not looking to protect a £10 million a year revenue line forever after. Yep. I want to make sure they get the outcome they're looking for, that program to be delivered. I want to make sure we've got the best people on it so that they get that right outcome. And so you're not having to feed an army of people. There's no bus pulling up at the front door. Sure. We've got to make sure that we've got 25-ish customers a year. There's a lot of repeat business. We can come on to that later on. But in effect, it becomes a bait ball, if you think of like little fish, hanging off the restaurant. Yeah. You follow the work around, you follow the customers around. We don't need to go and advertise or market. It's all network-based sales, recommendations, referrals, customers moving from one organization to another or one industry to another. They pick the phone up and say, would love to have a bit more support.
It was interesting to me meeting you at the dinner for lots of reasons. So this was for people listening, that this was a dinner sponsored by Garwood Solutions, and we met there. I was chairing the dinner, and I'd known about there aren't that many sort of boutique consultancies between say 100 and 1,000 in the UK at least. And I was aware of Project One, and I had although I hadn't interacted with them a lot, I'd got an image in my head of a brand that was very much roll your sleeves up, get the job done, and more practical perhaps than other consultancies. And then meeting you, it was almost like what I thought the epitome of the organization was. And one of the reasons I invited you is because with every discussion, with every point that was asked, you gave a very frank, honest, and no bullshit view, which I think everyone around the table really appreciated. However, it is different to the sort of the polished McKinsey say partner who you typically get. Went to Eton, went to Oxford. Lovely. Plays polo in his or her spare time. Now, my hypothesis is that the client world has changed, is that type of person perhaps would have done very well when everyone in the client base, especially in the C-suite, came from a similar background. But my hypothesis is that perhaps clients have changed, and therefore there's pursuing that strategy or recruiting from the same universities or certainly the same type of person doesn't work so well anymore. What's your thoughts on that?
The world has definitely changed, but I still think there is more than enough space and opportunity for everybody to play in the playground. As you said, your McKinseys, your Bains, your BCGs, very much in my mind, strategy.
Yep.
Going in there and doing a 12-week piece of work with a team of 5 or 8 or 10, create that strategy document, that 6-inch thick that's going to hit the desk. Very, very academic.
Yep.
In some senses, and then you get to the delivery element where this is where there is still that horrible line where we would then be presented with that tome, sorry, and asked, can you turn that now into real that we can deliver?
Yeah.
Can you also go back over the numbers and work out that when we carte blanchely say, or the document says, we can take 20% off the top line, by the time you break down into business units, business divisions, functional teams, 20% isn't 20%. Work out what the real number is before we go and declare it to the city. But you've then also got, as you said, the big consultancies, your mainstream Deloitte, WC, Accentures. But again, their world has changed. They're still providing volume on a vast scale, particularly Accenture.
Sure. Yep.
But again, you've got a lot of consultants who are just doing project and program management. It's just delivery. They're not consulting, not advising in the way that it was originally, vernacular years ago. So yeah, I do think it has changed. I think there's still a ways to go, because I think the customers do just want to get on with it.
Yep.
If I look back even to pre the finance collapse, the teams have halved. The number of people working on the project has halved. It halved at the time because no one had any money, and it never been allowed to grow back. The demand for change has gone just exponential. The speed of change has gone exponential. Whether it's driven by the investment and the analyst side, or whether it's driven by the corporate side, who knows? There's a bit of push and pull, isn't there? Definitely driven by share price and capitalization, because people want things doing now. You could look at it even from a competition lens and kind of go, I want to be better than my competitor.
Okay.
I need it in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. Whereas previously they may have gone 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Tech firms, far more solutions, far more readily available. Again, the slight challenge that everyone's saying, yeah, it's ready, it's in a box, we can just plug and play. We all know that isn't true, but that doesn't stop it happening and stop it being the start point. So the world has evolved. The mix of people playing has evolved. So I think back to when Project One was started, there was probably 2 or 3 boutiques. Yep. Back in the late 90s, there's now probably over 200-300. Every partner or senior partner that leaves a firm creates another one.
Yeah.
A good number of them, as you said, are probably looking just to create a team up to 20 or 30, whether they keep it or sell it, merge it, acquire it, whatever. They're not looking at a long-term play. And therefore, your point earlier on, there's very few firms that have kind of gone for it at the 100 and above level.
Is it just a quick interjection there? Is Project One still a partnership, privately owned? It hasn't floated yet, has it?
No, it's a privately owned limited company. It's not even it's not set up as a partnership even.
Okay.
And we're independent. I mean, the key thing for us is the independence, and you'd be amazed at the amount of conversations with customers that they really latch onto that, because you're not peddling anybody else's game. I'm not sell them some other solution off the side. I don't have a big, whether it's PE house or a big corporate, telling me what I have to do, where I have to go, what I have to sell, how I can operate. We are very agile in that sense. We can have flexible conversations with what customers want. We're walking in with a lever arch file saying this is how it will be done. It's very much we've got some really, really experienced people, but you've also got some very, very good ways of operating. Our job is to come in and just blend straight in. Most people in a customer world, forgetting the customer level of the C-suite, they wouldn't necessarily even know Project One are there by name. They just kind of see, the consultants, the people, and they just blend in. And that to me is great. I love that. Don't get me wrong. I'd love everyone to be saying, Project One, Project One, Project One, but I'll take the other one first, which is do a damn good job, and we'll keep being asked back to do more work. Yeah, you have. I remember I can't remember what the figure was, but I remember over dinner you mentioned the repeat business rate being very, very high. Ridiculously high. Well, higher than it's hard to say higher than anyone else, isn't it? Because a lot of big firms are in with companies for life, in effect.
Sure. With
But
different hats on sometimes.
yeah, we don't run that model. In effect, we will go in to run a program or a transformation. Let's think of it as a 3 or a 5 year window. Okay.
Yep.
When that's finished, though, I want us to walk out the door, because it's what we were there to do. When they go into the next wave of transformation, I want them to pick up the phone and say, James, next one's starting. Can we get some guys back in? So it's that repeatability. It's when a customer moves from telco to aviation to FMCG. Every time I want them to pick up the phone and saying, I've changed company.
Yeah, sure.
Can you please come and do what you've done before?
Okay, so the fact that you haven't floated does take some pressure off in terms of, you haven't got, I guess, lots of shareholders on your back saying we want growth 20% this year or else. But there is still the imperative that there are shareholders who, want a return on investment and all the rest of it. And I completely get the independence as being, one of your selling points, which is fantastic. But I guess what I'm asking about is in terms of growth, and the company's clearly grown to over 100 employees and is doing very well, it seems, on margins and revenue and all the rest of it. But in terms of growth, I hate the word scale, so I'm not going to use it. But how do you grow? And how do you satisfy the investors? Whilst maintaining independence from technology and whilst having a relatively low leverage ratio, I guess.
Yeah, so there's a couple of points to it. One, in the history of Project One, all shareholders have actually been active employees at the point where they're a shareholder.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're working in the business. Therefore, they have a thing. There are no silent partners. There is no one sitting outside just looking at a management pack at the end of the month.
Great.
That really focuses the mind. Number two, rhetorically speaking, what's growth? You're talking about headcount, you're talking about revenue, you're talking about profit, you're talking about the types of work we do. Because I've always viewed it as, in effect, the latter going kind of, back the other way. I think back to even when I joined Project One, and there's a bit of history to that that's probably worth covering. I didn't just stumble into the company. Terry Holland, the previous CEO, and I worked together on a banking migration in the city back in mid 2000s, 2004, 5, 6 kind of territory.
Yep.
And in your phone, you've got 5 people. And if they rang you and said, I'm putting a team together, you'd just be like, hell yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Terry was one of those 5. We both went our different ways at the end of that piece of work. And I went into that Lloyd's integration and then simplification off the back of the finance collapse. And he chased all the way through and said, look, I've come to Project One. I'm setting up what was then the London and kind of Southeast division. And I want you. You're one of the best guys I've ever worked with. I want you to come and join. And I kind of said, look, this gig at the moment is too big, but the second I've finished, give me a bit of time to sleep and I'll catch you up. And, true to my word, I had a couple of months off to sleep and then I came in. As you rightly said, I came in as a consultant, delivering a piece of work for John Lewis down in Victoria. But very quickly was kind of sat there talking to Terry and kind of saying, look, I get it, lovely firm, but why don't we do bigger stuff? I've just come off that Lloyd's when I've done London congestion charging in the past. They're massive. We're doing some nice stuff, but it's not that kind of stuff. So even then I was setting the seed of, growth to me is not just in your finance numbers. It's, I want to be known for doing big programs. And so over those 8 years, if I look at the type of work, the type of customer, the size of the customers, the size of the work, the size of the roles, they have all grown. So in effect, we have grown as a company, but the revenue doesn't have to grow at that kind of crazy rate. We've I don't have to grow the headcount by 50 or 60 or 80% to get that kind of growth.
Yeah.
It's by doing bigger programs with bigger day rates, with bigger scopes and bigger responsibilities.
Yep, that's interesting. It's an unusual approach to growth, but it's a long-term investment approach, isn't it? Actually, it's not let's cram more people in and make the projects bigger for the sake of it. it's, develop the skills of the people, develop the visibility of the project, develop the size, and all the rest of it.
And the brand awareness. So as much as we have got the repeat business from customers we've all worked with, you can't beat Father Time. Therefore, they're even retiring, themselves. Or you need their lieutenants and their recommendations to kind of be picked up, and for them to call and say, I was speaking to so and so. They said, it's worth a conversation. Let's get together. In effect, we kind of run marketing more as brand awareness than marketing. You won't see a magazine brochure 3-page spread on Project One, or if you do, it'd be very rare. It's more about just being known to the right people. We're also acutely aware of the market. There are a lot of big players in this market. There are a lot more boutiques than there used to be. There's a lot more relationships than there used to be. People buy people buy relationships. Therefore, you create your own pond. You might go outside it a little bit, but you create your own pond for going to fish. And as long as you look after those individuals, they will continue to service you. Now, it would have been easy to open up and say, we're going to go full pyramid. Let's just drop down. Let's do BAs. Let's do all the juniors. That'll give us another 10 million quid a year. But all of the team at the moment, all of those consultants left the big firms for a reason. They all worked for the 1.1. They all left, and I won't go into the reasons on this, but you can guess what the reasons are. And they came here because we've created a home that they love, which is to get to work on some of the biggest, most complex, publicly known programs in the country. They have full autonomy just to get on and deliver them. Yes, there is a consulting director who owns that account and that customer, but they're not sat there telling them what to do. They are big grown-ups with great experience. Let them do what they just do well. And do it in that environment. They don't have to worry about the pyramid below them. They're not having to protect a revenue stream because it's so vast that you couldn't possibly lose it. It's all about the customer. I often joke, if you think of it as a pet, if you go to the customer and say the dog's ill, we need to do something to help the dog, and they say, I don't want you to, you just got to get on. We'll do it, but we want the customer to know that the dog is ill. Whereas if you went to work for some of the other firms, that level of honesty isn't always there.
Well, their compensation is so highly tied to throughout the organization to development and selling the big projects. It's
which again ours isn't. So all of our consultants' bonus model is geared to delivery. So around in effect, them being on site helping those customers, and it's their bonus pot. There isn't a company bonus pot, that trickles down that no one ever gets. Remember those?
I remember it well.
Yeah, exactly. Horrible things. We've all been there. It's theirs. So, and again, when you're talking about that in recruitment terms, you can see the skeptical nature of it, and I totally understand it. By the time they get to the end of year one and they realise that it's really, really true, your bonus is your bonus, and therefore it becomes yours, and there's no risk to it. It's kind of happy days, and this broad smile appears on their face because it's first time they've ever had it, which ties into that concept of no balanced scorecards. No, you're not having quarterly reviews because you're working closely with these individuals on a continuing basis.
And I guess if you are, I love the phrase, I can't remember what he said about grown-ups, but dealing with grown-ups. And I really like that because if you are employing people who've been there and done that, they know the game. You don't have to align incentives, and it's like the NHS in some ways. As soon as you get a clumsy mechanism where someone comes in and sticks a KPI in, then everyone starts to perform to that, and then everything else that's important drops.
At the end of the day, with a consulting firm, we all know you need a pipeline of future business. You could, as you said, I think the way you described it earlier was quite nice, where in boutiques you've got that risk that it's the couple of people at the head of the firm that are going out and finding all the business. That's fraught with risk. How many hours of the day have they actually got, and how big is their network, and how can they continue to find it? If you have a world in effect that's a cooperative and where everybody is putting in a little bit, you are safe in the knowledge that there is always work coming. So therefore, if you finish your piece of work that you may have been on for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you don't have to worry what the next piece is, because you're trusting that the company, as an entity of 100, 120-ish people with all the back office,
Yep.
Already taken care of that because one of your colleagues has also been looking for new opportunities in their program within their customer, their client.
Yes. Yeah.
Comes
And I guess, go on, sorry.
I was going to say it just becomes a circular nation.
Yes. Yeah, and it takes some of the pressure off in terms of, in some ways, it's like old school consulting. You know, it's almost what I don't mean McKinsey because they are more strategy, but it's what the proper consulting was, you know, almost 40 years ago, when it was about client value and doing the work rather than, you know, just selling in massive projects. And
yeah, I mean, I don't see a world, again, we could have gone down the pyramid route, or we could have gone up and started selling products or solutions. And again, I just think that's a different space for a different type of firm with a very different operating model.
Yeah, sure.
I don't see us walking in and saying, look, you know, I've got the ERP for you, you know, and off we go, and here's my team to deliver it.
Yeah, sure.
We've picked a niche that works well for us, but I would go the other way as well, though, and say, I think I might be a bit generalistic and say all boutiques, but you know what I mean. I think there is a glass ceiling on boutiques around 120 FTE of consulting, of front end staff. I think once you go past 120, you will naturally fall into all of those fiefdoms, whether you call them business units, whether you call them divisions, whether you call them practices, it doesn't really matter. They will all splinter away. In not having them and having a pool of very experienced people who can do many, many things, we can avoid all of the politics that go with it, all of the, you know, that's mine, that's yours. And everybody just works together. So it's more kind of family orientated than corporate oriented.
Yes, it's interesting. It's interesting that I mean, with my practice, I see a lot of people. I see sort of 30 consultants as an inflection point where all of a sudden it can't be run out of the head of the founders. It can't be run on 5 spreadsheets. You need to have some systems. You need to have some roles.
Been there, yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go. And then I see the next bump being around 100 to 120. And once you get once you get to 200, there actually are very few consultancies at all of that size.
It's probably only a handful until you get Baringa again at 1,000. You know, it's because it's just how, well, to your early point, how do you feed a team of that size? Because that's quite 250 is a considerable amount. You therefore need a lot of clients, a lot of customers to be on an ongoing basis. I think when you've got that, the risk then of losing one customer group, you know, for any random reason, becomes a big risk on your business.
Yeah.
So in effect, you've got to decide what you want to be. Now, we did an interesting thing, which might surprise a few people and make others laugh. So when we completed the MBO of the owner founder back in the back end of 2016, we engaged another consultancy, Q5.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
And we engaged Q5 to run an operating model program, assessment, whatever you want to call it, on us. So we became the customers, and they ran the consulting.
I bet you gave them a hard time.
Well, I think go and ask John; he'll tell you. It was an interesting couple of months because, as you said, trying to do consultancy onto a consultancy, interesting opinions in every direction. There were some interesting moments at the start, you know, in those first few weeks where we're like, what are you on about? We're not listening to that. By the end of it, it's like, okay, they're making sense. Let's listen to them. But I would encourage any SME boutique firm to do that.
Yeah, agree.
Particularly if you're interested in growth. We sat there and kind of said at the time, you know, we are 18 years old. It's a bit like we've finished our A levels. What do you want to be when you grow up? Knowing that you've got to go through 3 years of university and further learning, but by the time you came out, ironically about now, what do you want to be? What do you want to be known for? What do you actually want to do? You know, and get on with it. And so we ran it over probably 3-4 months. And we needed that time because we needed time to reflect on all the points. So we had been carte blanchely against public sector as a company.
Okay.
Till that point. And the guys were just like, but why? Because it's 25% of the market. Why would you ignore it? And we had all the usual barriers of, you know, high cost of entry, all of the frameworks. We don't really know anyone in the halls of Whitehall, blah blah blah. But it was just about thinking about, well, that's not the only part of that industry or that sector or whatever you want to call it. But they did that across the whole company. And they even ran through, why do you only want to do leadership? Why do you not want to do the pyramid? And they said, well, why do you not want to sell products and solutions? And it was a great way, a cathartic way, in effect, of using a completely independent third party to validate where you were and what you wanted to do. Now, did it fundamentally change what Project One is today from what it was back at the start of 2017? No. Has it tweaked it in ways that have helped the company? Absolutely. Many different ways that, would not have happened if we hadn't done that, including, to your point, yes, we did used to run it on spreadsheets. We put a very glossy front end on the spreadsheet, but it was still a spreadsheet. So going and getting Kimball as a product and running that for your whole sales and finance, pipeline all the way through to the GL at the back has transformed the business, the MI.
GL?
Oh, general ledgers, to run it into Sage.
Oh, yeah, okay, okay. Yes.
It automated, in effect, our own company. Ironically, given that we go out and say to customers, you need to automate or semi-automate, fine. Just, painters and decorators don't do their own house.
Yeah. Well, I would extend that, and I would say not just boutiques, but even larger consultancies, certainly business schools in universities. I was amazed when I joined consultancies back when I was a corporate consultant. How badly run many of them were. Not doing it's cobbler's children, isn't it?
It is.
But then when I jumped to academia, I thought, well, I'm coming to some of the best business schools in the UK, and it was even worse. And even when I pestered them, they wouldn't use the expertise in-house. They had to go and get external consultants, which I can actually understand that. But yes, there was one of the large consultancies got in Boston Consulting Group. I think it's PwC got in Boston not so long ago, and it was so unusual. It made headline news, and there was charges that they should be slightly embarrassed about it. But
no,
that's the reason that clients use consultants. It's objective, external, it's the helicopter view, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, as you said, you've got to be prepared as this market changes, which it is doing and will continue to do. You've got to be prepared to open the kimono. As a industry, we're terrible at sharing. We don't. Now, the irony is that in every single customer client I have, I'm working alongside all those firms. I do most of what they're doing because people talk.
Yeah.
But we don't do it publicly. If I go back to my days in retail high street banking, teams used to work and talk together across companies. So you would have all of the mortgage leaders from all of the different, banks, building societies across the country would all come together quite regularly as a collective, as a forum to talk about, where the market's going, what it's doing, how the solutions are going, because they weren't afraid of each other. They knew there was a market there. They all knew they'd price differently. They all knew that customers would go to different people for different reasons. Consulting's no different, but we seem to still be stuck in this silo world. And it's somewhat, it's got a nasty's too strong a word, but there's still a little snipey bit to the top end of it where the big firms kind of look down on everyone else and kind of go, we're the guys that really do this. You're just toying with it, therefore, can you just get out of our way? We know what we're doing. I've probably got the biggest team of program leaders in the country, ironically.
Yeah.
None of them have got them available to sell to clients in the morning.
No.
But therefore, why can't we work together? Why can't you actually partner, collaborate, whatever word you want to put on it, into that market where you go to that customer and go, we're going to run the volume, we're bringing these guys in to run the actual program, therefore delivery surety goes up.
Yep. I mean, you know better than me, but it does seem that many clients are now questioning this sort of single source of expertise coming from many of them aren't, and many of them playing safe, but and I think a lot of that, from my experience, seems to be they're increasingly aware perhaps that they're not getting the innovation or creativity or even quality of work sometimes that the boutiques can provide.
I think it's that, and also it's just an acknowledgement that the boutiques are boutiques for a reason, and therefore they've got specialism in whatever they're doing it in. Whereas if you are a big house, you've got a lot of generic, and that's not criticism at all. They're great at what they do, but it is a generic house.
Yes.
Therefore, rather than saying, oh, in amongst my generic house, I've got one person who knows a lot about that.
Yeah.
I've kind of got that in spades, in effect. But I come back to that whole thing of we got to find a way of working together in the companies, in the organizations, the customer world. You're right. There's every model, and it's a bit like a strategy document, isn't it? Every 5 years they change the way they go at it from single source to multi-source.
Sure.
There is always a challenge or a battle between what the procurement guys, sourcing guys want, and what the client, what the C-suite wants. So you've just got to navigate your way through it in a nice way. Ultimately, what it comes back to for us and everywhere I've kind of been over the years, you as a supplier need a sponsor.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter who you are, how big you are, how small you are, whether you're on a PSL or not. If you have the sponsor will make sure you're in that organization, giving them the support they need, which takes you full circle back to this is a relationship management business.
Yeah, sure.
You have to spend the time over many years building those relationships, apologizing when you get things wrong, because you will, that's just life. Solving their problems when they get themselves into sticky situations without shouting about it, and just get on and, as you said earlier, just do it, just make it happen, deliver the change. Roll
up your sleeves and get stuck in. Thank you. I have one final question, which so this is something that so I told a few of my clients that I was talking to. My clients tend to be between these sort of 10 to 40 or 50 size range, and a lot of them, and I said, is there anything you'd like to ask, James? And a few of them were interested in making that, especially as you had started your own consultancy at some point.
Yeah.
Once you've got over that 30 hurdle and you're looking ahead in 5-10 years to potentially 100. What's on the horizon? What things that should they be worried about and aware of that might come back and bite them?
Fundamentally, we're a people business, no matter what size you are, and therefore you've got to look after those people. You'll never keep everyone. It's a evolving world. People will move on, and you've got to, in effect, celebrate people moving on and developing their own careers. But you've got to find a core set that's going to go with you on that journey. You've got to help them grow and be very open and transparent with them that you want to grow and that you want them to help you grow in whatever size and scale they can help play a part. It will fundamentally come down to the number of clients, customers, and work that you can generate. And that takes time. There is no way you can rush it. In fact, the only way you can rush it is acquisition.
Sure.
So if you look at Baringa, what are they, 12 years old, 14 years old?
Yep.
How many partners coming out of Accenture have gone into Baringa, and in effect that's let it ramp all the way to 1,000 people that in half the time we've existed. Organic growth is not the same. You've literally just got to add a few extra customers, some extra work, grow an account, and take it steadily, but be clear what you want to be and what you don't want to be. We have no aspiration to be 250. If we go up to 120, great. If we don't, great. What are we chasing growth for? As you said earlier, okay, there's a shareholder side to it, but that doesn't go on forever and ever and ever, does it? There's got to be a purpose. I'm more interested in the bigger, messier, uglier programs that are out there. I want it, right? I got that bug when I first worked on London congestion charging. I turned up in Capital Consulting on the first day, got put in a bid team for that. We won it, we designed it, we built it, we implemented it over 2 years. I got the bug. I wanted to get into London 2012 and I couldn't, but at the same time, Lloyd's HBOS was starting. That was enough to sort out my fixation. When I came out of that, I just wanted the next big thing, a 4-year, 5-year transformation with HSBC, again, with a lot of people that had worked on the Lloyd's team, Darryl West, and everyone moved down the river. So my fly to the light is chasing big transformations. That's what I want for us as a company. And we've built that storyline, that storyboard around wanting to do that. And of course, the types of consultants we've got, also want that. So we've been very clear what we want. We've been very clear about how to go out and get it. And therefore the company comes with you. The other final challenge I'd just say is how you refresh the team as you grow over the longer period of time.
Okay.
We find ourselves at one point where you kind of go, oh, by mistake or by accident, the average age of the team has kind of gone up with us because they were all here and all working great.
Yep.
But we had forgotten to bring in the latest latest group of 45-year-olds.
Okay. And do you mean at all levels, or do you just mean at the junior level?
We don't have a junior level, so
no, I suppose not.
That's the beauty of it. It's, you know, whether you're, I'll sound a bit ageist, but whether you're 40 years old, 50 years old, 55 years old, it's slightly irrelevant. You're bringing yourself into Project One because of the skill set you've got.
Yeah.
And therefore, as people have kind of grown with the company, we just needed to backfill and keep bringing in the next generation.
Sure.
And that's definitely changed in the last 2 years. That's probably one of my big learnings. But again, maybe it was a side effect of the COVID pandemic world, where in effect we just stopped. You know, we just focused on staying here and doing what we did without worrying about peripheral. We just, you know, you go to core management, don't you, in emergencies. And maybe it's just one of those things that if it hadn't been for that, we probably would have, you know, picked up on it a bit earlier.
I mean, I guess there still is a need for some formal. Sorry, I said that was the last question. This is a follow-up question. In that, even if you're taking on experienced people, which you are, even if you're taking on people who love a complex challenge,
yeah,
you are. You're also going to have to, I guess, capture some of the learnings. And there's with relatively high utilization rates, that learning piece, is that something that you actively work on? Do you have a framework for development, or is the development very much on the job?
It's very much on the job, but it's a weird environment in a good way, right? So this is a scenario that's played out countless times. Someone will join and they will come from a world where they were the North Star in their previous company that everybody went to. They come into Project One and they very quickly go, oh, hang on a minute, there's 100 North Stars at different levels, because as much as we're a flat structure and everyone's just called a consultant, you know, we know who the leaders are, we know who can cope with the bigger programs, we know who the lieutenants are, we know who the alphas are, who the church mice are. You learn. But what they do is, because they now find themselves in a cohort of consultants who are all experienced, all very well educated, trained, whatever you want to call it, they talk to each other far more than they ever would in those other firms, because they want to pick their brains. And because we've taken them out of a practice environment, so if you're stuck in an ERP practice in a big four, and suddenly you've come here and gone, well, you're not here just to do ERP, you can run any kind of big program. They kind of go, oh, thank God for that. But rather than trying to find their own feet on something they don't know about, they go and ask. And they know roughly the cohorts who know different things about different parts. And within an hour of asking, 5 people will have come to them with the answer. The reason people stop is because they've all seen that the first 5 have kind of gone, here you go, just go here, go there, that's got everything you need, don't bother rebuilding it from scratch.
Right.
You end up with this collaborative, ecosystem that probably doesn't exist to that level and that speed.
Yeah, it goes back to that anthropological study, doesn't it, saying that once you get above, I can't remember what it was, 150 members of a tribe, it all starts to fall apart because they don't talk to each other in effect.
Completely. So no, it's I mean, my 8 years have been, well, pretty much some of the most enjoyable of my career. It's we don't go in for job titles. I don't go in for job titles. So as much as it's nice to be called the CEO, at the end of the day, we're all here just to deliver for those customers. I want to make sure they are happy and they get what they want, and that keeps us all happy.
James, wonderful to talk to you. Great note to end on, and really appreciate your insights and time. Thank you.
You are more than welcome, and I'm happy to take any questions from anyone else, outside of this.
You're a star. Thanks a lot.